Today we are talking about my favorite book of all time, The Secret History by Donna Tartt. If you don't know this book and you read books, you really need to pick it up. I will say it's not for everyone. Some people either love it to pieces or never ever want to read it and can't even get through it, but I swear to you, if you are able to get through it, you will fall in love. If you are a fan of the dark academia aesthetic and you like reading dark academia themed books, then this is normally the #1 recommendation that you will hear from people when they tell you to read a DA book. When I talk about things within this aesthetic and I make videos on the decor ideas and the outfits that you wear, it really all comes from this book. This is kind of like the manual for dark academia. That being said, ever since I've read this book, I'm consistently on the lookout for a story that is similar. I don't care if it's like a retelling. I just want to feel the same feelings I felt the first time I read this. That's what I'm going for. The reason I wanted to make a video surrounding books that are very similar to The Secret History is because this book changed reading for me, okay? It really changed reading for me, and it was so impactful in so many different ways. And ever since I read it, I was on the hunt for a story that was similar. So the books that are on this list are very similar, and they might give you the same feelings that you felt when you picked up this one. Now, if you don't know what The Secret History is about, let me give you a little breakdown. It is about a kid named Richard who was kind of an outsider, never had a close group of friends, and he ends up going to this college and discovering this elite friend group that is very eccentric, very weird. They love to study Greek. They are very passionate about Greek literature and education, and he decides that he wants to befriend them. And because he never had close friends before, he is willing to kind of do anything to be a part of this elite group. And as he becomes closer and closer to this friend group, someone within the friend group ends up getting murdered. And you find that out on the first page, so I'm not ruining anything, it's not a spoiler. You are made aware that someone in the friend group has been murdered right off the bat. So that's kind of what the story is about. But the reason this book impacted me so much is because after I had read it, I let it sink in. I wasn't entirely sure if I loved it or not. So I let it just kind of chill in my brain for a few days. And I was sitting in bed one night and I started having this overwhelming anxiety. And I felt as if someone had just died. I felt so bad, and I was like, what did I do? Why do I feel like this? And I thought in my head, oh my gosh, I know who killed Bunny, and I'm gonna have to live with that. And I freaked myself out because I realized I had just crossed fiction with reality, and I have never in my life done that before. Like, yeah, I've always wanted Harry Potter to exist, but I never actually confused reality with fiction until that moment. And that was so kind of scary for me that I realized this is hands down my favorite book I've ever read because I've never experienced that before. So from that point forward, I decided I wanted to read every book that was similar to this story to try to recreate that feeling. And that's what I've been doing. I meant to make this video a long time ago, but because I had to actually physically read all of these books and a lot more that didn't even make this list, it's taken me a while. And one of the books I haven't even read yet, but it's on the list still because I know the story is similar just based off of what I've heard, and yeah, I just haven't gotten around to reading it. Here's the list that I made in my head to kind of choose which books got on this list. So the characters definitely need to be passionate about something. I feel like that's really important. There should be a school or campus setting. There should be an elite group of students or an eccentric group of kids, an outsider that becomes a part of the group, a murder of some sort, and a dark, moody setting. And the first book and the second book on this list gave me the feelings I felt when I read The Secret History. Like hints of the book, I started getting those feelings again. So that's why I put them at the top. So the first book is none other than If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. So in The Secret History, we get to explore students that are passionate about Greek, but in this story, we get to explore students that are passionate about theater and Shakespeare. The book starts out with you finding out that there was a murder committed 10 years ago and Oliver, the main character, is in prison for it. We don't know if he actually committed this murder, but he decides to tell the story of what actually happened to the detective or police officer that was on the case. This is about a group of students that go to an elite arts college. You will read about Shakespeare, you'll have that school setting, that tight-knit group of friends, lots of debauchery, sex, parties, and of course, murder. A lot of people complained about how the Shakespeare was just overwhelming and it was difficult. I personally don't find Shakespeare difficult to understand and read. If you are that person, I would recommend the audiobook, but I think reading it is way more immersive and you should totally read it if you can, get through the Shakespeare part. The next book that goes on this list, oh my gosh, it's so good, is the Bellwether Revivals. And even just looking at this book, you can tell it's going to be good. So again, in this book, you are told right off the bat that there has been a murder of multiple people. This book is really interesting because an outsider befriends a group of college students and he's not in the college himself. I actually really liked this point of view quite a bit as well because me not ever being in college, I didn't go, I would absolutely love to be someone in this situation that would befriend a smart group of kids that are kind of eccentric and weird and not have to have met them on the campus. This book takes place around the grounds of Cambridge. So this book is about Oscar, who is a care assistant at a local nursing home. All that changes one fateful day when Oscar is wandering around the grounds of Cambridge and is lured into the chapel at King's College by the otherworldly sound of an organ. It is here where he meets and falls in love with Iris Bellwether. Soon he is drawn into her world of scholarship and privilege and befriends all of her other friends along with her brother Eden. Eden is a musical prodigy who convinces his sister and other friends to participate in a series of disturbing experiments. Eden believes that music, with his expert genius to guide it, can cure people's illnesses. There was definitely a moment in this book that gave me the same feelings as The Secret History, almost how Richard just shouldn't have been there, but he decided to stay sort of thing because he just liked the group so much and wanted to be accepted. Yeah, you guys know the feels, but this one had to be second on the list because it is so good. Just imagine The Secret History, but another timeline of that group of friends who are musical prodigies. That is this. So you're just exploring a whole other means of passion, which is music. Now the next book on this list is The Likeness by Tana French. I feel like I've talked about this a lot. So this one is really interesting because you end up exploring that friend group again, but in order to get there, it's a little bit different. This book is about a detective who comes across a case where someone has died that looks identical to her. So in order to figure out who did the killing, who murdered this girl, they send this girl back to her group of friends that live at this mansion and act like she never died to try to figure out who did what. This group of friends is so similar to The Secret History. They have crazy parties. I mean, it's just amazing. It's everything that you would want. This book does not have a campus setting, but it does have the same type of friend group that you would see in The Secret History. It's almost like a continuation of that story, but a different time. For instance, if you remember in The Secret History when they go to Henry's house and they party, it's kind of like the same thing. It's been a second since I've read the book, but I'm pretty sure that all the characters, they go to school together and they are living in this house together to kind of save money, and that is something that you will learn more about when you read it, but the vibes of this book are so similar to The Secret History, and it's also just like a great story in general and very entertaining and fast-paced, which I love. It's a great read. It's number 3 on this list because it is one that I feel is most similar. If you can just forget about the campus setting, I promise you'll love this one. The next book is The Maidens by Mckinities. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. Mckinities. I'm probably wrong. So this book has a lot of similarities to The Secret History in terms that there is a secret society that is surrounding Greek, and there is a Greek professor. So this story is about an outsider who happens to be a therapist, and she comes into Cambridge University to try to solve a murder. And how that happens is because her niece goes to Cambridge and someone that she is close to has died. She ends up going to Cambridge to kind of help her niece Zoe through this death, and while she's there, she starts interviewing people and questioning people about their whereabouts and things like that. She ends up becoming really concerned that this Greek tragedy professor is the one that did the murdering, and it's mostly because he has this secret society of female students called the Maidens. Be prepared for some twists and turns. Once I got to the end of this book, I was like shocked. If you've read The Silent Patient, then you know that his writing's going to shock you. So in this book, you're definitely going to get, the atmosphere of the campus setting. You're going to have that elite group of students, and you're not technically going to be a part of that group. You're going to be an outsider that never joins it, but wants to become a part of it or know more about it. You get to read more about people that are passionate about Greek tragedy. You get to learn about a secret society, and of course explore murder. It made it on number 4 on this list because I felt it was very similar. The next book on this list is Black Chalk by Christopher J. Yates. This is the book that I have not finished reading. I've only started the first few pages. I literally can't say much about it other than the fact that I have read. It's so similar to The Secret History and I need to pick it up. So I still say read it because I'm going to be reading it and you might as well read it with me. First things first though, the cover of this book is just moody and dark and it looks like a campus. So that alone makes me want to read it. If I just saw this book on the shelf, I would pick it up based off of the cover alone. Also, it says 1 game, 6 students, 5 survivors. So yeah, there's murder. I'm just gonna read you the synopsis on the back so you get a little more understanding of what it's about. It was only ever meant to be a game played by 6 best friends in their first year at Oxford University. A game of consequences, silly forfeits, and childish dares. But then the game changed. The stakes grew higher and the dares more personal and more humiliating, finally evolving into a vicious struggle with unpredictable and tragic results. Now, 14 years later, the remaining players must meet again for a final round. This is a gripping psychological thriller, partly inspired by the author's own time at Oxford University. Black Chalk is perfect for fans of the high tension and expert pacing of The Secret History and the Bellwether revivals, which is funny because that's what I already mentioned on this list. I'm kind of bummed I haven't read this, so I can't say more about it, but oh my gosh, I want to start reading this in its entirety today because it just sounds so freaking good. Number 6 on the list is Bunny by Mona Awad. I'm so happy I read this book. I originally didn't read this for a really long time because I looked up the trigger warnings and it said there's killings of animals. And I was like, I can't read about that. Guys, it doesn't explore that. It's such a mundane part of this book in its entirety. Just read it regardless. It's not going to be anything that's going to gross you out and give you nightmares and just destroy your brain. I promise. I am super sensitive when it comes to things like that. It's fine. It's not even like gross or gory. I promise, it's fine. This book is about a girl named Samantha who goes to New England's Warren University, who is an outsider who is extremely repelled by this group of girls called the Bunnies. This is a clique of girls that I would compare to the Mean Girls. They're very rich and snooty and they kind of move together as one. One day though, she gets invited to the Bunnies party and once she goes, her whole entire life changes. She gets wrapped up into this almost cult-like group of girls and can't seem to escape. She ends up becoming a part of these sinister ritual experiments and turning into a bunny herself. I don't want to give too much away. It is really crazy, this book. It's so good though. It's just imagine The Secret History, but more of a cult. Yeah, that's this book. So you're going to have that school setting. You're going to have that tight-knit group of friends. They are definitely eccentric, weird, cult-like. There's also lots of murder. That's all I can really say about it, but it's really good, I promise. The Secret Diaries, Part 1, Temptation. Yes, it's called The Secret Diaries, guys. I have not read this book, but based On what I have heard, it's a total ripoff of The Secret History. But because I'm looking for books that are almost like a retelling, I had to put it on this list because I'm going to read it. So let me tell you what it's about. Joanna will do anything to be a part of the group. From the moment she sees them, Joanna wants to be one of them. To take Laurie's place, to be friends with Tessa and Stefan, and most of all, be the one who Penn loves. But as soon as she becomes one of the group, Joanna begins to understand that something's wrong. She has to talk to someone, but she can't confine her suspicions to her new friends. So in the pages of her secret diary, Joanna pours her heart out and unknowingly creates a record of the most monstrous evil that has put her own life in terrible danger. It sounds so good, does it not? I'm pretty sure this book takes place within a high school setting, so depending on whether you want to read something that's college, a little more older, it might not be for you. I still plan on reading it. I also don't know if there is murder in this book. I'm assuming there's some type of murder. Something weird is going on. I was on a subreddit and everyone was commenting that this book was so similar to The Secret History and no one talks about it. So I wanted to be the first one to share it here on YouTube. But any sort of retelling of The Secret History, I will read it. I will always read it, okay? The next book is Special Topics in Calamity Physics. I haven't finished this book. I'm only about 200 pages in, so I can't say too much about it. I do know the gist of the book. This book is about Blue, who embarks on her final year of high school at this elite school called St. Galloway in Stockton, North Carolina. Blue falls into this charismatic group of friends and their captivating teacher, but then one of those friends drowns and the teacher also dies. So in this book, you get the campus setting, you get that elite group of students. You also get lots of literary references within this book because Blue is constantly referring to her favorite quotes from authors and things like that. You get the outsider, which is Blue, coming into this group. You get lots of education and you get murder. So yeah, I can't say that this book is going to give me all the feels of The Secret History because I haven't finished it yet. But so far, I really think it is along the same path, except they aren't in college, they are in high school. So as long as that's okay with you, then I think you're really going to enjoy it. The next book is The Dead Poets Society, and this is based off of the movie. This was written after the movie came out. So if you've seen the movie and you enjoyed it, then you'll want to read the book too because it goes into more detail. Although this came after the movie, it was written based upon an earlier version of the script, so there are different scenes that you didn't get in the film. This tells a story about the non-conventional teaching methods done by a teacher at the Welton Academy. He teaches the students about their freedom to express their ideas in literature. So this book takes place in 1959 at a prestigious boarding school in Vermont called the Welton Academy, which is funny because The Secret History also takes place in Vermont, so you kind of get the same setting that you get in that book. While the students are in school, they end up discovering this old club called the Dead Poets Society, and they decide to start up this club again and sneak out with their group of friends where everyone is required to recite poetry within the group. So in this book, you've got that niche group of friends that are obsessed with poetry, you've got the school setting, the sneaking out, and you also have death. There is death in this book. The cool thing about this book, though, is that if you read the book, you can watch the movie afterwards and put some visuals to what you had read, which I love. So the next book came out last year and it's one of my new favorite books and that is the Atlas 6. I have the second one here. I don't have the first one in print, but this is the second of the series and it just came out and I'm currently reading it. So this book is fantasy. There is some fantasy in there, but it is very much surrounding education and science. This book is about the Atlas 6, 6 students that are the smartest, best in their class that get selected from around the world to join into this secret society. The only thing is 5 of them can join the society, and so one of them has to die. You get the school setting, you get the education, you get the friend group, and the thing about this book is that these are all strangers meeting that become kind of friends, kind of like a love-hate relationship, but they hate each other so much that they love each other. Like, you can tell that there is attraction between everyone in this book, which I'm all for it. Yeah, I'm all for it. And you will even see some spicy scenes in this novel as well, which I thoroughly enjoyed. The reason I really enjoyed this book and why I put it on this list is because the author chooses to have magic in this book, but have it be scientifically explained with logic, which is something I've never encountered when reading a fantasy novel before. You'll read a lot about quantum physics, theoretical physics, wormholes. There's just so much information in this book, and it's just really cool to read about. Another great thing about this book, though, is once you finish it, you can now read the second of the series, and so far the second of the series is very similar to the first. I would consider the second one also DA, but I'm not going to put it on this list just yet because I haven't finished it. So that is it for all of the books that I feel are most similar to The Secret History. I do have a longer list of these books, but I felt these were the most similar, and especially like the top 4, those will give you the same feelings The Secret History gave you. Hopefully. At least they did for me. But in terms of dark academia books in general, I have such a long list of those, and if you guys are interested in hearing about that list, let me know in the comments below. I do have some other school-related books as well that are considered dark academia that do have death, but they just didn't give me the same feelings that these books gave me, which is why they didn't make the cut. Well, that is it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this list and it gave you some new books to check out for yourself. You guys won't regret it, I promise. If you have read any of these books or would like to recommend something, let me know what they are below. Let me know what you've read below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.